Yeah, because they have to do it. Our people don't.
What's your thoughts on the game dissing Eminem? We talked about it here last week. We had a little not debate, but we talked about it. And I said from watching the game over the last few years that I feel like he has to do a lot of gimmicky stuff, even though his album didn't do as well. I'm sure as you hoped it would. I feel like he has to do a lot of gimmicky stuff for his people to look at his music, even though his music is great. What's your thoughts on his diss track to Eminem? Do you think there's anything real there, or do you think it's a gimmick behind that?
Do I think there's anything real there?
Yeah, like is he really hating on him like
Oh,
that?
like real visceral.
Yeah, visceral. Or is it
No,
like I'm just gonna use him as a target to try to sell some records?
no. I don't think Game is that kind of guy. I don't think it's a problem.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's just what you said. He's just trying to create some steam.
Yeah.
He's trying to create some steam. He went on Drink Champs. They made him feel like that they felt like that he wasn't better than Eminem, and I guess he wanted to show people. I ain't mad at him. You know what I mean? Like I understand what he's trying to do. And there was a time in hip hop, like in order to be the best, you had to come for the best. I just don't think we in those days no more. And I don't think I don't think it translates the same coming from him at 40 as well as it would have if it was him like at 30. Because he has classic disc records under his belt.
Yeah.
So the idea in theory is fire.
Right.
In theory, it's supposed to be exciting. Game coming for Eminem, or the possibility of Game coming at M and M coming back at him. Like that's some exciting shit as a hip hop fan to consider.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think this was just one of those scenarios where I don't think he read the room that well. You know
And
what
I
I
don't
mean?
think. Yeah. Sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it didn't translate the way that it would have. But I definitely understand what he's trying to do. And to answer your question, no, I don't think it was nothing personal.
Agreed.
One thing we also appreciate about you is you do interviews. Do you have a podcast? Let me start with
No, I don't have a podcast, but you know what, man? I went and bought like a bunch of stuff. You can see I got the mic. You know what I mean? Like I got like all kinds of cameras and shit that I try out. I built sets and stuff in my studio. I haven't quite pulled the trigger on a podcast yet because the way that I felt about doing a podcast during the pandemic is a little bit different from how I feel about doing one now.
Okay.
You know, like I talk when I like to talk when I want to talk. Like when I feel something on my heart that I want to get off, but having to like show up every week or two and just talk, like I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm still mulling that over in my mind. You know what I mean?
Well, all right. So I want to say this. What we appreciate about you is you can come on these platforms and have different variety of conversations. Not every conversation is the same. We're not hearing about your upbringing and everything the same, blah, 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 blah. We're talking about different things, and you have a perspective on those. And it's dope to hear from you, Royce the 5'9", the artist and the man, those perspectives. But we feel like sometimes when a lot of these artists, in particular hip hop artists, they jump into the podcast game because they assume it's popular or easy or whatever their case may be, it kind of waters them down to where we used to kind of have a mystique or to be able to have an interview with them and have that dynamic between the person who's interviewing and the person who's responding. It's a dynamic, a beautiful kind of relationship that people really appreciate it. Do you think that there's a problem with it? How do you feel about hip hop artists in particular going into the podcast game? Are we kind of reading too much into it? How do you feel about that?
Anytime you have something that's thriving and then people see it thriving and then a bunch of people start rushing to that space, that's always going to be problematic because everybody's not going to be good at it. It's the same with crypto, NFTs, real estate, shit, anything that you can think of. Right. You know what I mean? Silicon Valley. You know what I mean? Like you go rush into that space. The guys that are like pros over there who's really done their due diligence, who know what they're doing, they look at you like, yo, what are you doing over here? You just shooting at blindly at a target and you in our way. But I mean, that's what happens when the masses rush to a space because guys like yourselves who are good at it, you guys make it look easy.
Appreciate
You
it.
know, so somebody like myself, I'm in a group with Joe Button. You know what I mean? Like I've always known that he was good at that.
Right.
Like even before he was doing it. So now that he's where he's at, I got to look at that when I make my decision. If I decide I want to do a podcast, I got to look at that. Like, why would I want to compete with that? There's something I got to figure out a different way to get into that space, or just figure out a different ways to um, build my brand and show you the things that I want, that I'm ready for you to see. It's also an evolution thing for me. You know, like I never thought that I would ever expose this many layers of myself when I first got into the business.
Right.
I've always been a real private kind of a guy. It wasn't until that I started to see the benefits of being a little bit more transparent, and that's probably unique to me, just because when I started telling my story, it started helping so many other people, and I just started to get fulfillment from that. But you know, right now I'm in a space mentally where I feel like shit. I don't know if I need to be talking all the time, because now I'm experiencing like people taking what I say, flipping it. I'm experiencing people taking what I say the wrong way, just themselves comprehending it differently, processing it the wrong way based off of their own preconceived assumptions of me prior to listening to what I had to say. I experienced people only looking at like a little clip and just coming to a conclusion from there, and feeding like narratives that are hurtful to me. You know what I mean? So it's like when you start experiencing shit like that, it makes you just not want to talk at all.
Facts.
So now I look at like the Beyoncés and people on that level, the Eminems, and I'm like, okay, I see why they don't talk. You know what I mean? So I'm rambling, but that's
No, you good,
kind of
bro.
like some of the things that I think about right now. But I'm definitely thinking of trying to figure out some ways that I can be more involved just in the content space. But it's probably going to look more like me letting people in as opposed to me marketing some podcast to them or something like that. I don't know if I'm gonna do that per se, but there's definitely going to be a heaven experience up here in my studio that I'm still trying to figure out a way to present it to people to where they feel like I'm letting them into everything that goes on up here. Because you know, one of the first questions that you guys asked me was like, "Yo, I seen Cole was up there." People are interested in that, so I'm just trying to figure out a way that I can kind of like present that to them.
Sure.
Right.